as we all know, Ric Flair has not been a part of WWE for a while. He asked for his release, got it. He's no longer part of them. And the rumor was that he was leaving WWE to go to AEW to be a manager for Andrade. That didn't happen after an episode of Dark Side of the Ring, The Plane Ride from Hell, which basically accused him of committing some very heinous crimes to a flight attendant. But it seems like he has not talked to Tony Khan, but he's also said that he's never working for WWE again as long as one Nick Khan is working for the company. Here's what he had to say about it. If you take me off the opening of the show and take the woo, which I own, thank God, because they'll never get it back, and replace me with the Ultimate Warrior, a guy that sued the company, held them up for money. I guess that's the next thing they're going to do with me is make a DVD having so many people saying how bad I was, that I did things, then brought him back, put me in the Hall of Fame. That ain't going to work for me. One and done. And very openly, I text Vince. No worries, but you're not going to bring me back. Not that they, by any means, but I could never work for Nick Khan in my entire life. Vince McMahon, I could work for. But Nick Khan, who's the guy that orchestrated taking me off the show? I've got my facts together. Orchestrated taking the woo off? No, never in a million years. Big difference between Tony Khan and Tony Khan respects me. He has, as Vince does, Nick Khan has none. I'll talk to Vince now. I got no problems with Vince. He just knows I won't come back. And then he also talked about Tony Khan, saying that there are no discussions at AEW at all, but he would work for Tony one day if they have that discussion. So, Ralph, what are your thoughts on this bit of information with Ric Flair? I mean, it's hard to say Nick Khan is behind this given the situation as to when this happened. They took the woo off as like a week after the Dark Side of the Ring episode happened. So I don't know if that's necessarily Nick Khan trying to take away his legacy, but this is interesting situation here.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I know he's talking about his intellectual property and stuff like that. And you and I had a conversation about this. Ric Flair was a little, obviously before my time, but growing up, I definitely paid attention to him. I was younger, so I know all of his epic promos. I watched him growing up, but I don't really ever remember him referring to himself like explicitly as the man. Yes, everybody knows the famous lines to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I think what we have here is a case of the WWE, whether it was Nick Khan, Vince McMahon, somebody trying to essentially copyright the name, the man, because obviously Becky Lynch is referred to as the man. To me, Ric Flair was always the nature boy. Now, somebody who's paid attention to wrestling during that time period and maybe a little older than me, maybe could speak a little differently to that, because maybe he did really refer to himself as the man more frequently than I remember. But, again, this kind of goes back to WWE just with the bad PR. Like if this did truly transpire the way that Rick is saying it did, him being on his deathbed essentially and having WWE try to swoop in and steal, copyright the name The Man, that's not necessarily in good taste, I would say. So I can't really speak to that because it's one guy's word against what actually happened, and we don't know what actually happened.
Right. But also, if this is true, like Nick Khan is the one that orchestrated all of this, you kind of have to think to yourself too, is he the one that's orchestrating all these releases? Is he the man that's cutting all these guys after, Swerve Scott and Hit Row get called up and then 3 weeks later are released? Or, Keith Lee is repackaged as Bearcat. We see him for a couple weeks. He's looking strong. Then he gets released. Karrion Kross, they try so much with him. Then he gets released. Like some of these like questionable releases and like a guy like Bray Wyatt, who was a main eventer and a Universal Champion, and Braun Strowman, I'm a Universal Champion. He gets released. And it's like, these don't make sense. But this could be, pun intended, the wrath of Khan that's doing all this. And it's kind of given Vince McMahon a bad look. It's given WWE a bad look. And this just adds fuel to the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is going to add fuel to the fire, because whether it's true or whether it's not, I mean, obviously it's Ric Flair, he's saying it, and I'm sure that people are going to take his words and everything with some validity. So, especially whenever it's something or somebody putting WWE in a bad light or bad position, people tend to gravitate towards that because, people are very vocal on social media about that type of stuff. So, yeah, whether it's true or whether it's not, word's going to get out. It'll spread like wildfire and people will talk about it. So, yeah, definitely not a good look for WWE.
Right. Now, part of his legacy, Ric Flair's, is the fact that he is the 16-time world champion, right now tied with John Cena. It's more likely that Cena will one day break that record if he comes back and has one more title run. But there are people that are speculating that Ric Flair will come back, work with NWA, and take the title off of Trevor Murdoch and get number 17 with NWA. Do you see that happening?
No.
Especially now because he's talking about his legacy being removed.
His legacy will not be. Look, if Rick is so confident that he has this great relationship with Vince McMahon, at the end of the day, Vince McMahon owns WWE and oversees everything that happens within it. His legacy is what it is. There's no erasing his legacy.
Right.
He is one of the all-time greats. He's up there, debated as maybe being the best wrestler of all time. And I wouldn't question that if you asked me if he was the greatest of all time. His retirement, which, obviously he came out of retirement, went to TNA, but his send-off that they had was essentially second to none. He's in the Hall of Fame, twice now? One for being the Four Horsemen, one as just being himself.
And if Evolution ever gets in, he'll be the first 3-time Hall of Famer.
That is true. And they probably will get in, and he will be a part of that. Granted, right now, I know there are some things, whether it's a work or whether it's not, between him and WWE and Charlotte. This is not, it's not something that's outside of, the realm of possibility. These things happen all the time in pro wrestling. Guys, business gets in the way, egos get in the way, what one person says versus what the company says. Those things happen all the time. People leave WWE, go back. It's happened there. It's happened in WCW. That's the way the business unfortunately works. So his legacy is what it is. I don't think that WWE has the power to essentially erase that. And to your first question, no, I don't see him coming out of retirement to win the title.
I don't know. Stranger things happen in the world of professional wrestling. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, especially with this whole thing going on about his legacy. He'll definitely want to try to be 17, and no one's going to, be able to break 17 unless Cena has,
what about Orton? Orton's up there too. No?
Orton, he's at 14, I believe. He could definitely do it if he keeps his momentum that he has right now. I mean, given his condition and his work rate, I mean, he's not exactly a guy that does, flips and dives and all the stupid stuff. So he could go another 10 years. I mean, if Jericho can wrestle in his 50s, I think Orton is probably going to work better than he does in his 50s. And no, this isn't an AEW versus WWE comparison. I'm just using him as an example. But it could be, I could see Orton win it 3 more times. And maybe Flair would like that better because Orton is a Flair, Orton is a Flair guy, whereas Cena, I mean, he wouldn't mind it, but I think he would prefer Orton, I think. And he said that, I believe, on record.
Yeah, I don't think, I personally don't think anybody should break the record. If Cena did, I'd probably have mixed feelings about it, but he obviously is a big star. But Ric Flair is Ric Flair. He's been a guy who's really been at the top of the game across a number of generations here. So
right. Which happens
decades,
first?
I should say.
Which happens first then? Flair's record being broken or Bruno Sammartino's longest reign record broken? If Roman Reigns could hold the title for, I think it's 5+ years, almost 7 years.
No, their fans would never. It'd be so hard for fans to be invested in something like that nowadays, especially considering WWE as big as they are, social media wise, as many shows as they have per week. Fans just would tune out at some point.
True. I think you need like a very strong baby face, and even then that still wouldn't work. But